Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a listener request today. They're really interested in figuring out how to get to like a 0% tax bracket in retirement.
Okay.
And they want to explore some options that go beyond, the typical Roth IRA, which we talk about a lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
And, they sent over some really interesting research, including a whole chapter from a book about this. And it really focuses on something called a life insurance retirement plan.
Hmm.
RRP. Have you heard of these?
Yeah, I've come across LIRPs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as commonly known as some other retirement vehicles, but they can be pretty powerful tools for certain folks.
Okay, so I'll admit this was a new one for me when I saw the listener's request, but apparently it's got some, some serious fans out there. So
Yeah.
it's got to be worth looking into, even if it turns out not being right for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is how many people just completely overlook LIRPs.
Yeah.
They might not be suitable for everyone, but for those who are really, aiming for that maximum tax-free income in retirement, it can be a real game changer.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit because from what I'm seeing, it seems like a LRP is technically a life insurance policy,
Right.
but it's not used in the traditional way that most people think of life insurance.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's kind of like a twist on the whole concept of life insurance.
Okay.
So with a typical life insurance policy, you're trying to get the most coverage, the biggest death benefit for the lowest possible premium.
Yeah, you want that good deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a LIRP completely flips that script.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you actually end up minimizing the insurance component
Okay.
in order to really maximize those contributions that you make to the account where your money grows.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So we're not talking about a huge death benefit here. We're talking about using this policy to accumulate wealth. That's fascinating. So I guess the question that comes to mind for me and probably for a lot of our listeners is, are there any concerns about, lawmakers coming in and saying, "Hey, this is too good to be true."
Sure.
Are we going to see some changes?
Yeah, that's a smart question, and it's one that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
People are always worried about, tax loopholes getting closed, and
Right.
things changing. But historically speaking, LARPs have been fairly resilient when it comes to, changes in tax laws.
Mm.
There's a pretty good chance, actually, that if something drastic were to happen, like, say, the elimination of Roth IRAs,
Right.
existing LARPs would likely be grandfathered in.
Oh, wow.
Now, of course, nothing's set in stone when it comes to future legislation.
Right, of course.
But that historical precedent offers at least, a little bit more peace of mind.
Okay, that's good to know. So, say I'm intrigued by this and I want to maybe shift a good chunk of assets into this LRP. Are there contribution limits like there are with a Roth IRA?
Nope, that's actually one of the big perks. There are no contribution limits whatsoever.
Wow.
And another nice thing is that there are no income restrictions,
Huh.
either, unlike Roth IRAs, which, start to phase out for higher earners.
So even someone who's, earning a significant amount of money could still contribute to a LRP.
That's right.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is. And you might be surprised to know that something like 85% of Fortune 500 CEOs actually utilize LRPs as part of their retirement strategy.
85% of Fortune 500 CEOs. That's a pretty compelling statistic.
It is. It really makes you think.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder what they know that maybe the rest of us don't.
Exactly.
So, all right, let's say, I'm starting to see the appeal here. How does the money actually grow within a LIRP? Are there different, investment options?
Yeah, there are. So think of it kind of like choosing your own adventure for your money.
Okay.
You can go the safe route,
Yeah.
and just let the insurance company, invest the money in their general portfolio.
So that's similar to a fixed income kind of approach. It's exactly lower risk, but also, likely lower returns. Steady, but maybe not super exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
So what if I want, a little more potential for my money to work a little harder?
Then you might consider what are called sub-accounts.
Sub-accounts?
Yeah, these are basically like little mutual fund portfolios within the insurance company
Oh, okay.
that give you, the potential for higher returns, but also, of course, more risk.
So that's more akin to being invested directly in the stock market.
Exactly.
Okay. And then is there a third option?
There is actually. There's a third option that kind of splits the difference a bit, and that's indexing.
Indexing. Okay.
So in this case, your money is linked to the performance of a market index like the S&P 500,
Okay.
but with capped gains and also downside protection.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you participate in market growth up to a certain point,
Right.
but your account's protected if the market takes a dip.
That sounds appealing, especially for someone who wants growth, but also, wants to sleep at night. Are there any downsides to that indexing option?
Well, since the gains are capped, you're not going to see, the same explosive growth potential as directly investing in stocks.
Right, if the market just goes crazy.
Exactly. But for a lot of investors, that trade-off for downside protection is well worth it.
Makes sense.
And historically, this approach can still generate returns of, 7-9% annually.
Wow. Okay, so there's some flexibility there depending on, your risk tolerance, your investment goals, and all of that.
Exactly.
But with all of these potential upsides, what are the downsides to a LIRP? There's got to be a catch, right?
Well, you're right. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Uh-huh.
It's crucial to really understand the trade-offs involved.
Okay.
And the main trade-off is that it is still a life insurance policy.
Right.
So in exchange for all those tax benefits and the growth potential, you're also paying, term life insurance premiums each month from that accumulation account.
So it's not free money. You're essentially shifting what you might already be paying in life insurance premiums
Right.
towards this LIRP
Yeah.
and getting those tax advantages in return.
Exactly. Think of it as repurposing those premiums, for something that could potentially benefit you even more.
That's a good way to think about it. But I guess my concern would be, if I'm putting all my eggs in the LRP basket, what happens if something happens to me and I don't have, separate life insurance coverage?
That's a great point, and it's why diversification is so important.
Okay.
You're right. A LRP shouldn't be your only strategy.
Right.
A well-rounded retirement plan has multiple layers of protection, multiple income sources.
Right.
So think of a LRP as, an additional tool in your toolbox.
It's not the entire toolbox.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this fits into the bigger picture here. What else should I be aware of when it comes to LARPx?
Well, there's another aspect we haven't talked about yet that makes them pretty unique, and that's their potential use for long-term care coverage.
Hold on. Long-term care, I don't usually associate that with life insurance. How does that work?
Many companies offering LRPs now include a provision where you can actually access the death benefit before death
Really?
to cover long-term care costs.
Interesting. So instead of having a separate long-term care insurance policy, you could potentially tap into your LRP to cover those expenses.
Exactly.
Huh. And is that a common thing?
It's becoming increasingly common, and it can be a really compelling alternative because you avoid the risk of, paying for long-term care insurance for years and years and then never actually needing it.
That makes sense. But how common is the need for long-term care? Is this something I should be genuinely worried about?
Well, unfortunately, it's more common than people realize, and the cost can be devastating.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story about a hypothetical couple, Mike and Susan.
Oh, no. Don't tell me this is a cautionary tale about the dangers of not planning for long-term care.
Well, it does highlight the importance of being prepared.
Okay, I'm already nervous.
So imagine Mike has a stroke at age 65, and he needs, care in a nursing home. His IRA, his pension, his Social Security,
Mm.
They might not be enough to cover those costs, especially if Susan is relying on his income.
So they might end up depleting their savings to pay for his care.
It's a real possibility.
Mm.
Now, compare that to if Mike simply passed away, Susan would inherit his assets
Okay.
and be in a much more secure position.
Right.
The point is, long-term care can be just as financially draining, if not more so, than death.
Wow, that's a sobering thought.
It is.
So back to the LRP, it sounds like using the death benefit for long-term care is kind of a win-win.
Yeah.
If you need it, it's there. If not, your heirs still benefit.
That's a great way to put it. It provides that flexibility and that safety net that, traditional long-term care insurance often doesn't offer.
Okay, I'm starting to see the advantages stacking up here. But one thing I've seen online is a lot of criticism about LRP fees. What's the truth there? Are they something to be concerned about?
It's true that LIRP fees are a common concern, but it's important to put them in context.
Right.
For example, the average 401k plan actually has total expenses of about 1.5% per year.
Wait, so you're saying the fees aren't necessarily higher with a LRP?
Well, it depends on how the policy's structured.
Mm.
Think of it like using an ATM.
Okay.
You pay the same fee whether you withdraw $20 or $200.
Right.
So you want to withdraw as much as possible to make that fee worth it.
So maximizing your contributions in a LRP would actually minimize the impact of those fees.
Exactly.
Okay, good analogy.
And with LIRP, those fees are covering your life insurance coverage, which can double as long-term care coverage.
Right.
You're getting a valuable service in return.
That's a good point. It's not just money disappearing. It's paying for something tangible.
Exactly.
So is there any way to know for sure if a LRP is right for me?
Well, the first step is to really ask yourself, do the potential benefits outweigh the cost for your individual situation? That makes sense. But how can I accurately assess those benefits and costs if I'm not a financial expert?
That's where a good tax-free retirement specialist comes in.
Oh, okay.
They can really, analyze your finances, project your retirement income needs, and help you determine if a LIRP truly fits into your overall plan.
Sounds like a good next step if I want to explore this further. But I have to ask, if LIRPs are so great, why haven't I heard about them before?
Well, historically, they've been used primarily by, wealthy individuals and CEOs.
So it's like a secret weapon for the elite.
You could say that,
Yeah.
but the good news is that LIRPs have been redesigned recently to be much more accessible
Oh, really?
and cost-effective for everyday investors.
That's great news.
It's like they're finally getting the recognition they deserve.
I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear, how this all fits into a comprehensive plan to actually reach that 0% tax bracket in retirement.
Absolutely. And to do that, we need to talk about the concept of, finding the ideal balance for your tax-free bucket.
Yes. You're talking about the three buckets of retirement savings, right? Taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free.
Exactly. To truly minimize your tax burden in retirement, you need the right balance in each of those buckets.
All right, so let's refresh everyone's memory on those buckets.
Okay.
And then see how LIRPs fit into that bigger picture of achieving a 0% tax bracket in retirement.
That's like a plan. Let's start with the taxable bucket.
So the taxable bucket, remind me again, what's the main purpose of that?
Yeah, so the taxable bucket, it's really for those like short-term needs,
Yeah.
your emergency fund, things like that. Ideally, you want to have around 6 months worth of living expenses in this bucket.
Got it. So that's our rainy day fund, accessible money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep it somewhere accessible, like a savings account or a money market fund.
Makes sense. Okay. What about the tax deferred bucket? That's where most people keep their 401ks and traditional IRAs, right?
You got it. The advantage there is that, your contributions are usually tax deductible,
Right.
and then the money grows tax deferred until you withdraw it in retirement. But there's a catch.
Uh-oh. What's the catch?
It's called required minimum distributions, or RMDs.
Ah, yes, RMDs. Those are the withdrawals you're forced to take starting at age 70 and a half.
70 and a half, whether you need the money or not.
Right. Whether you need it or not.
And those RMDs can really mess with your tax situation if you're not careful.
Yeah, they can push you into a higher tax bracket.
Exactly. Even if you're otherwise living comfortably.
Right.
The goal is to manage that tax-deferred bucket so that your RMDs don't exceed your standard deduction in retirement.
So you want to kind of keep that balance low enough to avoid a big tax hit from those RMDs.
Exactly.
Okay. But what about the money that goes beyond that ideal balance? Where does that go?
That's where the tax-free bucket comes in.
Okay.
And that's where LIRPs can be such a powerful tool. Any money that you have above and beyond what you need in your taxable and tax-deferred buckets should be directed toward tax-free options like Roth IRAs or, as we've been talking about, LIRPs.
So we're not just, maxing out our 401k contributions blindly. We're really strategically thinking about, allocating our savings across all three of these buckets to keep our overall tax burden as low as possible.
Exactly. It's all about optimizing for the long game, not just for, the immediate tax deduction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might be, making those extra contributions without realizing the potential tax implications down the road. I know I was.
It's a common mistake.
Yeah.
It's why working with a good, tax-free retirement specialist can be so valuable.
Right.
They can help you analyze, your current contributions, project those RMDs down the line, and create a plan to move some of those assets, to the tax-free bucket where they can potentially grow without being taxed.
It's like you're fine-tuning your whole retirement plan to make sure that you keep as much of your hard-earned money as possible.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think our listener is getting a pretty good sense of how these three buckets work together. Now, where do LIRPs specifically fit into that tax-free bucket?
Well, remember, the beauty of a LIRP is that those withdrawals are completely tax-free.
Yeah.
You're essentially building this pool of money that you can use later without having to worry about the IRS taking a cut.
It's pretty compelling, especially when you consider how much uncertainty there is about, what future tax laws might look like. Having that, that portion of your savings tucked away in a truly tax-free vehicle, could offer a lot of peace of mind.
Absolutely. Think of it like an insurance policy against future tax hikes.
Yeah.
You're creating a level of certainty in an otherwise uncertain world.
Okay, I like that. So to recap for our listener, we've talked about, the three buckets of retirement savings: taxable, tax-deferred, and tax-free. We've explored how LIRPs can fit into that tax-free bucket and potentially help you reach that 0% tax bracket in retirement. What other key takeaways should they keep in mind?
Well, it's important to remember that, a LIRP isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
It's a sophisticated financial tool.
Okay.
It's not right for everyone. It needs to be carefully considered as part of a holistic retirement plan.
So don't run out and buy one without doing your homework.
Exactly. Talk to a professional.
Right.
Sure it aligns with your goals, your risk tolerance, all of that.
Right. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is a long-term strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's about building wealth over time,
Patience is key.
not getting rich quick, focus on that potential for tax-free income down the road.
Exactly.
Great.
What else? And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
This is complex stuff. You need to find a knowledgeable and experienced tax-free retirement specialist who can really guide you through the process and answer all those what-ifs.
That's such good advice. We've covered a lot today, but I bet our listener still has, a million questions. What's the one thing you want them to leave with?
I'd say this. Don't settle for a retirement where you're, handing over a big chunk of your income to taxes.
Right.
Explore all your options, including LIRPs, and create a strategy that lets you truly enjoy those golden years, to the fullest, without being burdened by unnecessary taxes.
I love that. It's all about, taking control of your financial future. We've given our listener, a new perspective on tax-free retirement planning and hopefully sparked their curiosity about LIRPs. But what now? What's the best next step for someone who wants to learn more?
The best next step is to reach out to a tax-free retirement specialist. They can walk you through the specifics, answer your questions, and help you determine if a loop is right for your situation.
Great advice. And remember, everyone's financial situation is different, so personalized guidance is crucial. Now, for those of you who might be thinking, this all sounds great, but is it really attainable for someone like me? We have an exciting story to share that might change your perspective.
Oh, I think they'll love this one.
Yeah.
It's about how LIPPs are becoming increasingly accessible to everyday investors. Let's dive into that story after a quick break.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm really excited to hear the story you teased before the break. It sounds like it might really address some of the concerns that our listeners might have about whether LIPPs are truly attainable, for the average person.
Yeah, you're right. There's this kind of misconception out there that, these really sophisticated strategies are only for the wealthy, but that's rapidly changing. There's a fascinating trend happening right now where companies are actually redesigning LIRPs specifically to make them more accessible and cost-effective for everyday investors.
So it's like LIRPs are finally shedding that elite image and becoming a little more mainstream.
Exactly. This is a really exciting development.
Yeah, it is. Can you give us an example of how these, redesigned LIRPs might work for the average person?
Sure. One company, for instance, has created a LIRP program that functions very similarly to a Roth IRA,
Okay.
but with that added benefit of no contribution limits.
Right.
So this really opens up, a whole new world of possibilities for people who want to maximize their tax-free savings, but are limited by those Roth IRA contribution caps.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage for someone who's really serious about, building that tax-free bucket for retirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these redesigned LIRPs often come with, lower initial premiums as well, which makes them more attainable for those who, might not have a huge lump sum to invest up front.
So you don't need to be a millionaire to get started with a LIRP anymore.
Not at all. You can start small and gradually increase your contributions over time, much like you would with a Roth IRA.
That's fantastic news for our listeners who might be thinking, this all sounds great, but is it really within my reach? It sounds like the answer is increasingly yes.
It really is. The landscape of retirement planning is definitely changing, and these innovative LIRP programs are really leading the charge in making, tax-free retirement more achievable for everyone, not just the wealthy.
I think that's a really powerful message to end on. We've delved deep into LIRPs today, explored the 3 buckets of retirement savings, and really highlighted the potential of these plans to help you reach that 0% tax bracket. So what final thought would you leave our listeners with today?
I would say don't underestimate your ability to create a truly fulfilling and financially secure retirement. Don't be intimidated by these seemingly complex strategies.
Right.
Arm yourself with knowledge. Find a trusted advisor and explore all of your options. LIRPs might just be the key to unlocking a retirement that truly exceeds your wildest dreams.
I love that. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Knowledge is power, and the more you learn about these strategies, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions for your future. So to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has empowered you to really take control of your retirement planning. And remember, it's never too early or too late to start building the future that you deserve. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep striving for that 0% tax bracket. Until next time, happy investing.